Namandats, 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 namandats. Gagon chosengan ishimujoldo shingan humanzok seifu josholgak gao muryoko hui dai se shu hu sai shobingu sei fu jo shongak ga shi jo buddha myo sho cho ji po ku kyo mi shomon Seifu Joshogak Ryokujin Shonin Joe Shubongyo Shingumu Jodo Isho Tennin Shi Jindiki Endaiko Hushomu Saido Shoujo San Kumyo Hosai Shuyakunan Kaihi Chiengen Meshi Konmoran Heisoku Sho Akudo Tsuratzen Shimon Kosojo Manzok Iyoro Jippo Nichigat Shujuki Tenko On Fugem Ishu Kaihozo Kose kudoku ho Jodai shuchu Seppo shishiku Kuyo isai bet Gusoku shutoku hon Ganne shinjo man Toku isan gayo Nyobun mugechi Tsurat mihusho Gangaku erik Toshi sai shoson Shigan yakoka Daisen no kando Kokusho tennin Touchi myoke Namandabu 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 Nishiku doku Byo Namandats, 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 namandats. Please join me in Gassho. Namandats. The sutra further reveals that Shakyamuni appeared in this world and expounded the teachings of the way to enlightenment, seeking to save the multitudes of living beings by blessing them with this benefit that is true and real. Thus, to teach the Tathagata's primal vow is the true intent of this sutra. The name of the Buddha is its essence. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandats, 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 namandats. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Sunday service for the July 17th. And I am very happy to welcome you all to the Tacoma Buddhist Temple. I don't do this often enough, but for those of you who are new to Buddhism or new to the Tacoma Buddhist Temple and are watching right now, I warmly welcome you all. It is always wonderful to know that there are people exploring spirituality or other religions and are looking at Buddhism. So I would like to acknowledge at the beginning of this message to welcome you all to watching our YouTube channel. I know we are very eager to also have our services in person, and I am so overjoyed when we are able to do that and we are able to meet in person. Today's quote, today's Gosandai comes from Shinran Shonin, our founders, Kyogyo Shinsho, the first chapter on teaching, the teaching of our Jodo Shinshu way, or the teaching of the Pure Land Path, the true teaching of the Pure Land Path. And this is important because this segment here is actually sometimes chanted in our tradition. And it's very beautiful when the doshi, or the person who sits on the special seat, the raiban in front of the onaijin here, does this in a solo line. But this is very important to our tradition because for Shinran, this is basically his, I would almost call it his thesis, or, you know, not thesis, but like the argument that backs up his thesis as to why the Pure Land Path is the Buddhist path that we should all follow. It is because this, according to the sutra, or the larger sutra, the Buddha of infinite light and life, the whole purpose of Shakyamuni Buddha's teaching was to come to this world and teach us about this path of Pure Land Way, or of calling of Amida Buddha. And I think it's very, very moving because what this means is that Shakyamuni Buddha came to this world and taught a teaching for me. For me. And not just for me, but for you as well. And this seems odd, right? Because when we talk about the state of the world or the way that things are, we're always talking about changing, right? That way that things change. Look at technology. I mean, now, all of us, and for those of us who, you know, are privileged enough to have them, but we can't go a whole day, especially here in the United States, we can't go a whole day without looking at our smartphones. Every few minutes, we're taking it out. We're probably playing Royal Match or Candy Crush or something like that. And for a while, I was addicted to the Wizard of Oz slots. And we are constantly consumed by television these days, right? In some cases, people leave their televisions on just for the noise. And it's hard for me to imagine that there was a time that there was no broadcast after a certain hour, right? Like they would say, "This concludes tonight's broadcast," and they would play the national anthem with the American flag, and then it would just go, and you would get that blizzard on your television. And thinking about that, right? I mean, like now these days, I don't even get a newspaper delivered anymore. I just use the smartphone app that with the local newspaper here, the News Tribune, the paper of the South Sound. I always read that, and part of me, and I guess the way that I'm thinking now is that why would I bother getting a physical newspaper? That it'll save forests or it'll save on paper, and on top of that, I get more up-to-date news quicker with the smartphone and with the smartphone app. So this is the kind of world we're living in now. And to add one more example, we can binge watch our favorite television shows now whenever we want to. If you are able to, various people have Netflix or Hulu, right? There's a lot of these things that we can have. But taking all of that away and taking away like a lot of the privileges that we have, what are we left with? Well, we're left with our imperfect selves. In some ways, some of these items can be argued that they enhance our imperfect selves. The fact that we are able to have things delivered to us right here, right now, or get news that is very, very immediate. One could argue that this causes us to become more impatient, or it in a sense amplifies our imperfect selves or our impatient selves. And so, again, you strip all the nuts and bolts away as all the modern conveniences that many of us or some of us are able to afford, we are left with our imperfect selves. We still are afflicted with the human condition. We are still bogged down by our selfish wants, our selfish desires, the things that we think that we need in order to be happy. These are the things that continue to grasp us. These are the things that continue to clog us, right? And I know I am speaking from a very privileged standpoint when I say that, for a lot of us, we're looking forward to the next computer version that comes out. And same thing, when we want to get a new car, it has to be this year, the 2022. We want all the features on it, right? And the same thing, we want this level of, or this next level of a gaming console. Everyone's trying to get their hands on the PlayStation 5. We look at these things and we think, okay, in order to be happy or in order to make our lives worth something, we have to be the ones to be able to get those things. I have to have a lot of money. I have to have the new car. I have to have a Tesla. I have to have this style of purse in order to be happy. But according to Buddhism and Shinran and any other Buddhist master, they will tell you that all of that is bonno, kleshas, afflictions, imperfections, right? It's not, and I'm not saying that it's bad to want nice things or that it's something that, you should feel ashamed of for wanting. And we're going to get into that in just a second here. But again, this comes back to the original text that I just quoted here, right? That this teaching, the teaching of Shakyamuni Buddha about Amida Buddha's Pure Land, about Amida Buddha's universal wisdom and compassion, that there is a Buddhist teaching for me, for you, for all of us. And most importantly, it's a teaching that accepts us as our imperfect selves, right? All of us are also afflicted with the notion that we are always right about things, that our way of doing things is the best, that we know the best way to go. We know the best directions to get to a place, which is why couples get into arguments when they get into cars. It doesn't matter what the modern technology is. It doesn't matter how advanced we have become as a society in terms of politics or in terms of technology. We are still human beings and are still afflicted with the human condition. And so because of this, Shakyamuni Buddha, even 2,500 years ago, was able to teach us a teaching that not only teaches us about our imperfect selves, they not only talks about our imperfect self, that reveals our imperfect selves, but also gives us hope for our imperfect selves. Also gives us a sense that we are not going to be abandoned, right? And in fact, because we are imperfect, because we are the way that we are, this is the teaching for us. Now, again, it's human nature to compare, contrast, and even compete when it comes to schools of Buddhism. I personally don't really like doing this all that much because I find many various Buddhist teachings or Buddhist schools to be very neat or very insightful. I am still in definite awe when it comes to the Tendai monks on Mount Hiei. People will tell you, and I will say it again, that I was obsessed with climbing that mountain. I would do it all the time on my first summer vacation in Japan. I would love going up on that mountain, and I would feel this great sense of accomplishment when I went up there, and I got to see the monks doing the hard practice of the fire ritual and the Sennichi Kyogyo. I didn't get to see that personally, but I was able to see Tendai monks doing beautiful shomyo, Tendai monks performing well, I didn't get to see it because the doors are closed, but there is the circumambulation, the 90-day circumambulation around Amida Buddha's statue called the Jogyo Zammai. And I could hear the priest saying Namu Amida Butsu constantly. So I was really taken with this. And again, I have nothing but respect for the other Buddhist traditions out there as well. The quiet sitters of Soto Zen and the Rinzai Zen monks trying to figure out the riddles. So if I speak highly of these other schools of Buddhism, it's not that I think that they're better than us or that I think that they have more to offer, but I do think that for me personally, I can be nothing but a Jodo Shinshu priest. I mean, for me personally, there is no other path that has been laid before me but that of following the Pure Land way. Because as impressive as some people may have said me to be in certain ways, I've been complimented on my chanting before, and I appreciate those, but that's my ego talking. I don't have the fortitude or the discipline to do those other hard practices. I was not born in those circumstances. And personally, I think it's just within myself karmically that I, was not born for that. The same thing is true with Zen Buddhism. And being born into something doesn't mean that you're confined to it. But at the same time, I also have accepted that this is the path that seems to make the most sense to me. This is the path that speaks to me the most. And thank goodness Shakyamuni Buddha was insightful enough to see this. But going back to the quote itself, that the whole purpose of Shakyamuni Buddha coming to this world, right, was to liberate all beings of suffering. To liberate all beings from their sufferings and their sorrows and their graspings and their clingings. This was the purpose of Shakyamuni Buddha coming to this world. Now, depending on which sutra you read, Shakyamuni Buddha will say different things on how to correct this or how to cure this. But for us in particular, why were the 3 Pure Land Sutras so popular? It's because it can speak to the majority of people in regards to their way of life. Only a small percentage of the population were karmically born to become monks. Only a small percent of the population were born to do the hard practices, the austere practices, the complicated practices, the weeks-long worth of meditation and seclusion, up in the mountains or up in the meditation halls. And this is not to say that other schools don't recognize this. But for the average person at the time of Shinran, and I believe the average person for today, what can I do, right? When you have a job, a mortgage, children to take care of, family to take care of, elders to take care of, realizing that there are so many responsibilities that keep us from hard practices of Buddhism. Now, again, this isn't to say that I think that, people who become monks are incorrect or that they are, destined to fail. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is that that's not the majority of the population. The vast majority of the population of this world are not concerned with achieving a certain amount of time that you're able to meditate without breaking, time of fasting, right? We're mainly concerned with making it to the next day. For some of us, the main concern is surviving. Others' main concern is putting food on the table or making the payments on a regular basis or taking care of a sick loved one. That, I believe, represents a majority of the population. Not just that, but also those of us who are, of course, born with the human affliction or the human condition of a self-centered ego. And all of us have this. And it's very hard to break that. So this is why I believe it's so important for us to remind ourselves time and time again that this teaching was meant specifically for me, was meant specifically for you. No matter who you are, what you've done, or the viewpoints you might hold or cling to, Amida Buddha embraces you. This isn't to say that when you do things or that harm others or when you take actions that harm others, that it's all okay. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that there is a Buddhism for everybody. And this is the Buddhism for everybody. Amida Buddha accepts all sentient beings to the Pure Land. And once one has actually taken refuge in Amida Buddha and fully trusted themselves to Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion, then, and only then, do we become truly settled. Then and only then are we able to live this life with in a sense, an authentic life, a life of being truly aware of who we are, and also being embraced. So with this in mind, I would like all of us to once again deeply reflect on what it means when we place our hands together and say Namo Amida Butsu. It isn't to say that that these words don't have a profound effect on us, but I think it's a continuous loop. We are profoundly affected by the Buddha's wisdom and compassion, and because of that, we say Namo Amida Butsu. But when we also hear Namo Amida Butsu, we are also profoundly affected by this. This is what the Buddha was trying to teach us when we are, when we were taught this teaching by Shakyamuni Buddha over 2,000 years ago. And to me, this is incredibly profound for us because when I go back to that statement that I said before, that we are deeply affected by this, and so we say Namo Amida Butsu, and we're also deeply affected by hearing Namo Amida Butsu, there is no start and end, right? We as humans try to think on a linear basis, or that there's a start point and a finish point. And Buddhism has been trying to tell us for the longest time that that is not the case. And if you don't believe me, the fact that we as the human race have never been able to really, on our own, been able to rid ourselves of the human condition, I think speaks volumes. If we really truly were all able or capable of ridding ourselves of this, of this samsara, of this life of birth and death on our own, we wouldn't have needed the teachings of Buddhism at this time because we would have already had them. But because the cycle of life and death continues in this world, because the samsara continues to spin its wheel, we are in desperate need of the teachings and to take refuge in Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion. I can think of no better time sometimes when things are bad that we realize just how futile sometimes our actions as humans can be. Now, this is, again, isn't to say that we shouldn't try to make society better. We should do our utmost to make society better, and sometimes we should make decisions based on how we have been taught to view the world, right? And especially as Buddhists, how we are taught to view the world as is interdependent, right? Not my actions alone do not affect just me. But because of this, because I am a Bonbu, I must also rely on the wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha. And then when coming to realize that Shakyamuni Buddha came to this world or appeared in this world solely to teach me the path of the Pure Land Way, I can think of no other feeling but deep gratitude. And then I place my hands together and say, Namo Amida Butsu. I would like to thank you all very much for joining me today in this July Sunday service. We have been appreciating some slightly cooler temperatures. It wasn't too hot, but it's getting a little bit hotter, a little more humid. Let's all do our best to stay cool and drink plenty of water. And let's all remember to say the Nembutsu. Please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandats, 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 namandats. To conclude today's service, I'd like to actually go back to reading in English one of Rennyo Shonin's Gobunsho to remind us again about the times that we live in. So if you could all please bow your heads in silent reflection as I read you Rennyo Shonin's Gobunsho. Chapter on the ignorant beings of the final age. In this final age of extreme uncertainty, all unenlightened men and women who single-mindedly and devotedly rely on Amida's 18th vow, no matter how heavy the weight of their evil karma may be, will be assured of the deliverance through Amida Buddha. This is the meaning of the 18th vow, which assures spiritual rebirth through the Nembutsu. Once we are convinced of this firmly, we should continuously recite Namo Amida Butsu for the rest of our lives. With reverence, I remain. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandats, 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 namandats.